if you get nothing else from this book, you just know that the fundamental thing about being a manga artist is you need to get them to turn the page, and you need to get them to do it again. And if you keep doing that, you have a career.
Wow.
Welcome to Studio Beancan's Drawing Board segment. These are collections of musings, thoughts, arguments, caught on tape while recording the time-lapse videos, and put together just for you. Think about this as the Bean Can scrap pile. I hope you enjoy it. Let's go. Let's do it.
All right, we should introduce you. I don't even know how to pronounce your last name. This is Geoff. He's a cartoonist friend of mine. I met through Mission Comics through Leaf.
Vasile.
Yeah. Geoff Vasile.
Geoff Vasile.
We're in his studio, which he was very kind enough to share with me. And, you know, he's like old school traditional cartoonists, work physical material, hand letters, sable brushes.
No, I've graduated to brush pens and felt tips, so my technique is not quite that archaic. But yeah, for the most part, I do everything with the maximum amount of physical media and therefore frustration.
But it's something you find satisfying, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
So much satisfaction.
So much satisfaction. All right, so this is page... So this was like a... I don't know why I brought both. This was the advanced reader copy that I personally printed out because pandemic had started. And so Abrams stopped making them. But I had some opportunities that I needed there to be one for. And I mean, got it into all the San Francisco public schools through Comics Experience.
That's wholly worth it.
Absolutely worth every penny of the $6 it took for me to print this. And like, I was, sometimes you just got to do it yourself. Like, so my dad's a children's book author, and there are all these situations where from time to time, other creators will be like, why does he get invited to everything? I mean, it comes up, but usually he wasn't actually invited. He like reached out and like did the extra work. And I guess I'm fortunate enough to kind of know that a lot of times behind opportunities, it wasn't the publisher that printed out the thing for you or whatever. It was the actual author doing the extra work. So
somebody creating the opportunity for themselves.
Yeah, and a lot of those things don't happen, you know. But every once in a while something does, and it is cool that the kids in this town in public school get to read my book. I recently posted on TikTok for the very first time, and the very second time. And the very first time no one liked the thing. But the second time, people did like it, and someone found it that had read this book and was really excited about it, which was kind of cool.
It's something I've had to be conscious of in my own work. Speaking of like spending time daydreaming about a story and the region where it takes place, is like there are things I take for granted about a place because it exists in such fully formed fashion to me in my mind that I take that for granted when I'm drawing it, and I like neglect details that the reader would need to flesh out the area.
Yeah, and it's always a balance because you don't want to like over explain necessarily.
My guiding principle when making comics is like, don't insult the reader's intelligence.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have to find a balance between like what the reader needs to understand the story and how completely it already exists in my brain.
I've had I recently just put out online like a comic I did when I was in my early 20s, and I remember some people really liked it that I showed it to. It was like a very weird indie action thing. But
I think this you showed me this as well a few weeks ago.
Monsters or
yes,
whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I some of the people that like it the most like that like I don't explain stuff, but there's a lot of place for their imagination to fill in.
Yeah.
But then some people are like, what? Like what?
I don't know if you remember when you sent it to me. I compared it to Brian Ralph's Cave-In.
I'm not familiar with Cave-In. So.
It's really good if you can. I'm not sure if it's still in print, but if you ever see a copy or if it's like floating around online somewhere, it's worth checking out.
Okay.
Totally formative for me when it came out in like the 90s or the early 2000s because it's I think it's mostly silent.
Oh.
So it's a lot of like environmental storytelling. But yeah, like you said, you leave a lot of space in the reader's brain to kind of flesh out aspects of the world, but not much is explained.
You know, I think of this as like they're like different kinds of literacy, right? And I'm pretty good at speaking in like a relatively simplified like vocabulary, you know, fifth grade vocabulary ish, which is like good. But there's also like a narrative vocabulary that is independent, like how steeped you are in general plots and like the kind of prose and fiction that is already available in the world. Like, are you the kind of person that goes out to the movie with their family and is just like asking like what's happening all the time, or are you the person that is like explaining ahead even though like you haven't gotten there yet?
Yeah.
Or are you like in the sweet spot? Like a lot of times the perfect movie for you is the one where you think you know what's happening and then you don't. And if you just never know what's happening, or you always know what's happening, maybe it's just not the right, you know, level of narrative literacy for you, you know? Is that the right?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I have been pretty deeply steeped in narratives where you don't know what's happening recently, and they've been some of the most rewarding kind of narrative experiences I've had. I'm not necessarily talking about comics right now, so I don't know if it's worth mentioning the specific works that I'm talking about.
You can if you want.
Well, I mean, I'm a nerd, so I just I've been playing Elden Ring.
Oh, okay.
Which for sure.
People love it.
Yeah. People watching this. People watching videos about comics on the internet and people playing Elden Ring. Or
have a Venn diagram.
Yeah, the crossover in that Venn diagram is substantial. But you know, things are not very clearly explained in that. And I also read Gene Wolfe's Solar Cycle. And that was about a year and a half long process. And they're both things that even though I've finished them, I have spent a lot of time after the fact reading about online, reading people's interpretations, reading like critical things about the Wolfe books. There's a lot of like Gene Wolfe readers out there. And it's made me want to do something like that. Like I've never really thought about creating something where the reader doesn't necessarily know what's going on, or like deliberately obfuscating any of my plot points, which I think can create a deeper kind of engagement.
Yeah, the question is like, how do you get people to lean in?
Yes.
Instead of like, how do you be like, trust me, I know. Like the only comic I can think of is like Velvet Glove Cast in Iron.
Oh my god,
it's kind of like that.
But that it's like it's so stream of consciousness anyway, and there's no real payoff. It kind of does just follow a dream logic.
Yeah, but there's something to it because there's a lot of people. I've read a lot of indie cartoonists that are doing their version of that doesn't keep you going, right?
Well,
no, yeah. But like I'm just saying, it's not. There's something there. I haven't read it in a very long time, but like I remember there being something there that feels like you're in good hands, right? Despite it being surreal and confusing and disorienting, there's definitely this then this.
I don't think it hurts that it is illustrated with one of the deftest hands
for sure
indie comics has ever seen.
I mean, and that is a thing that like there are like certainly like I think of feature films, like you think of like John Wick is not there because the plot is amazing. It's mostly I mean it's mostly the ballet. It's the violence ballet,
of
right?
Course.
But like there is enough of that to like give it that satisfying, you know, whatever. You know, that there's like a book about drawing manga, like the Golden Road of Manga from the creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always like repeat to myself is if you get nothing else from this book, you just know that the fundamental thing about being a manga artist is you need to get them to turn the page and you need to get them to do it again. And if you keep doing that, you have a career.
Wow.
Which at the end of the day is like it's a good thing to remind yourself. You gotta remember that fundamental.
I love like I don't mean the word simplistic as an insult in this context, but I do love like simplistic guiding principles like that for constructing your narrative, because it really like you can build something. You can disappear so far up your own ass, building something incredibly like dense and layered. But unless you give people reasons to turn the page, they're never going to discover whatever it is you're burying underneath all this narrative obfuscation.
Oh jeez. Spam call. I gotta put my phone on silent. Sorry, internet.
This is Clip Studio, or this is
Procreate.
This is Procreate.
Yeah. So like this page took me 5 hours and 18 minutes, right? That's pretty good. It started with the thumbnail though.
Jesus Christ. I think 5 hours and 18 minutes is
It's extremely fast.
it's staggering. Yeah.
But I started with, I just plopped that down. So it was already pretty there.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
And the 5 hours, 18 minutes wouldn't count if I like left for coffee and came back or anything. You know? So, but this was, at this point, I'm getting pretty fast. Working with a publisher, we worked on the script, but they were like, we want you to do this graphic novel in a year. And I was like, I'm already out of time. 200 pages in a year, I am already out of time. It's like a 90-page script. I had like negative time to write the script because I need that approved before I could start drawing. And so I'm in a panic mode. The editing process is a slowdown too, right? Which is, it's not a bad slowdown necessarily. Anytime you make a change, that could be a change they don't like or whatever. And so there was this moment where they're like, okay, it's done, stick to the script. And I was like, what? I just wrote like a 90-page script in a month and a half or something, like a few weeks.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to spend a year drawing it.
Yeah, now you're beholden to the script that you rushed out.
Yeah, it's like I have a year to make this as good as possible. Like how does that work? Next time, if possible, what I'm going to do is a tight outline that we edit, and then a rough, like thumbnail version.
Okay.
So that I can have that space to have things surprise us. If you were a creator, I would ask to outline to edit an outline as tight as possible. I would then ask to have editorial conversations about final art in every single style that would be in a book. So like if you're gonna have dream sequence, do a dream sequence style. If you're gonna do this, have it this style, and not move forward until you hear back. And then ask them to edit not from a script, but from basically thumbnails.
Yeah.
Because like the more things change over and over again, like if someone gives you a little edit, like in chapter 6, have it say this. And I was like, well, if they say this, that doesn't make sense. So I have to change this. So if I just go do that, and they're like, well, this is different now, so you should change that. Like I've heard, again, in film, people talk about like I wish I remember who said this. It's like, you have to avoid getting to the great it, where everyone just kind of throws their hands up. It's like, fuck it, you know?
That's really funny.
And like, that is like, it is so hard to make something decent, and it is infinitely harder to go from decent to amazing, right?
Yeah.
And the closer you get, the more frustrating it is, the more impossible it can seem. And at some point it's easy to give up. So the question is like, how can you do that? How can you not get to giving up? Who's going to be the person that keeps it there? In theory, that's you as the artist, which is, you know, that's not something that's like tied into my DNA.
Well,
you know?
I would think that would be the value of having an editor.
Yeah.
Is that it is somebody to keep you kind of
Yeah.
on task and focused on the narrative as it's best presented.
For sure. And I also think that I would assume, I've only worked with an editor, and I'm excited to, you know, work with others in the future, but like, I assume that it is also about personality and character matches too.
Yeah.
You know, where there's probably a lot of cartoonists that need to be told to like, stop redoing it. It's fine. Like, you know,
there's at least one of them in this room.
Yeah, right. And vice versa. I feel like if a future editor of mine ever sees this, I'd be really good with like a weekly. If I didn't know it was an auto email, it was like, saw what you're working on. It's solid. I think you could do a little better. Like if I just got that every week, and I didn't know it was automatically generated, I think that would help me keep a little fear and God in me. Like honestly, this book is so much better than the pitch. Like art-wise, part of it is because I was doing a lot of pages, but part of it is because I had that feeling of pressure.
Yeah.
Whether or not it was really there. You know, they obviously bought the book based on the art I had submitted. So they probably thought it was decent. And then I was like, I'm working with a real editor.
Yeah, a lot of that is just you kind of psyching yourself out over like having this opportunity to level up.
Yeah, and so that is both good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was probably, I expect that people are excited about how the quality of the art improved, but also probably I'm frustrating because I'm like, I want to do everything, you know?